So I've been following the Diddy case, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty biased with it. I think he's 100% guilty. Think he needs to be locked up for the rest of his life. Guilty of the charges and more that they're not presenting. But as much as I hate to say it, I still think that there's a high chance that he's actually gonna walk. And the reason why I think that is because I don't think the prosecution is doing a good job at all with translating what this RECO charge is and the sex trafficking and tying it all together. Um, I think they're focusing on like the wrong. I mean, first off, I think they're focusing on the wrong empire. And second, I think they're focusing on wrong parts of the enterprise. So let's just get into it. All right, so they bring up, the reason why I think he's gonna walk is because they bring up, Bad Boy Enterprises, Bad Boy Records, how they're gonna tie that into racketeering and RICO. And there's a lot of circumstantial evidence. There's a lot of physical evidence too, but of course, there's just that debate of like, okay, but is it Rico? Like, yeah, he's a domestic abuser. He has these weird freak offs, maybe even date rape, maybe even, certain things like that. But as far as Bad Boy Records, I think they're going to have a really hard time just really nailing, hitting that nail in the coffin and really like conveying that this is racketeering and RICO within Bad Boy Records. So, and I think it's because, first off, I think they're focusing on the wrong victims. So right now, and of course, I have all the respect to all the victims. I'm not trying to talk bad on anybody at all. So don't take this the wrong way. But I've noticed that so far, all of the victims that they've had on the stand, and of course, rightfully so, they've been more so like the submissive type, I guess. Very shy, very timid, scared, and of course, like I said, rightfully so. These are very tough things to be talking about and, humiliating to have to relive in front of strangers, and in a courtroom like this. So, rightfully so, of course. But, it just doesn't play well with, again, this is New York. You got to think about New York. You got to think about the culture and hip hop culture and black culture, all of it, like all the context. It just doesn't play well when you have, the submissive type on the stand that continues to go back to the abuser. I mean, even though it's wrong and I don't agree with it, we've just seen time and time again how people don't believe the woman. They don't have sympathy for her because she continues to go back and she doesn't stick up for herself. She's too timid and too shy or whatever. And people just don't understand what goes on in an abusive relationship unless you're in one, or unless you know people that have been in them or seen it firsthand. It's hard for people to understand that kind of dynamic and why people would stay, why these women would stay. So, okay, we've got the submissive victims, we've got the sad, scared victims so far. Okay, now let's bring in the dominant victims. Let's bring in the aggressive and angry victims. Okay, let's bring in Aubrey O'Dare. Is that her name? I'm pretty sure that's her name. But let's bring in Aubrey, from Danity Kane, who has constantly um, talked about the abuse that she has endured during her time in Danity Kane at the hands of Diddy. This has been well documented. This has been, I mean, they did their reality TV show, they did all that. This has been documented. There's videos out there. She's been speaking out against it for so long. And she's strong. She's strong. She stands on business about what she's talking about. Let's hear from her. Why aren't we hearing from people who have spoken up against Diddy and have therefore been punished and blacklisted from Hollywood, or, you know, been in jail? Um, let's talk about the fact that this goes all the way back to the 90s. There's plenty of evidence where Diddy has used Bad Boy Records to facilitate crime or facilitate abuse. And I watched the Inside on TMZ, and Ebony on there. She made a very good point about, everybody's talking about, oh yeah, Cassie, she's not a good singer. Everybody's laughing about it, da da da. But she made a really valid point, and I just want to talk about it even more. The valid point is that, okay, so if Cassie really was a bad singer, which, I mean, let's be real, y'all. I'm not trying to disrespect her or anything, but me and you, she's basically a one-hit wonder. Me and you, that's a classic hit. It's always gonna fucking, hit in the clubs and everything. Undeniable banger. But that's pretty much all she has out there. So if she, and again, that's a pop song. It wasn't really showcasing, an extreme vocal talent. So if she wasn't extremely talented and she wasn't continuously producing hits, then why keep her on this contract? Why not fire her? Or why not, try to do different things, or, maybe like get her on different features, or actually try to make her a successful artist? Why just leave it at that one hit and then still have her on a 10-year contract? You know, that's a very valid point, because it just had me thinking about like R. Kelly and Aaliyah. You know, of course, all of that was wrong. He's been convicted of his crimes, and we now see exactly what was going on there. But with Aaliyah, at least she had vocal talent. That girl could sing. So, and I'm sure, like, unfortunately she died too soon. She passed too soon, and but I'm sure that if she was still alive, that she would have went on to make you know many more records with R. Kelly, and hopefully, for her own sake, that she would have escaped R. Kelly and found a different producer. But I'm sure she would have went on to make a lot of more records. So with that, at least he kind of had like an excuse of why he signed her to this record deal and why he was making these records with her, because she actually had talent. When we look at Diddy and his, attempts at these artists, which are female artists, Cassie and Danity Kane. I mean, let's be real with Danity Kane. And again, no disrespect, but let's be real. They really didn't have like the most extreme vocal talent, out there. Like, yeah, they put out some hits, of course, some good club hits, some pop hits and everything. They're entertaining, they could dance, they could move, they were attractive to look at, but as far as extreme vocal talent goes, or anything like that, it really wasn't too much. They had their hits, and that was it. So why would you continue to have them in a contract? And again, with Audrey, or Aubrey, I'm sorry, I'm fucking up her name. I'm gonna correct that. But with her, she's spoken out against the abuse for so long, and it's, like I said, well documented in these real time reality TV shows where her and Diddy are just going back and forth. He's constantly fighting with her, constantly irritated with her. And just from a professional level, why would you continue to have an employee, on your payroll, or why would you continue to have somebody in your group that you were unsatisfied with? If you were unimpressed with her, if you were so, unsatisfied with her work, and you just didn't like her that much, why not just fire her? Why would you continue to have her around? Why would you continue to have this group around if they're not continuously making hits? This is a clear example of the RECO, of an enterprise that was created, Danity Kane, that was created to facilitate abuse against women. Because if he's not actively trying to get them out there, if he's not actively trying to make them a successful girl group, which they could have been, but he wasn't trying to do that. He wasn't trying to do that. One could argue that he created Danity Kane in order to have a group of women that he could legally control and abuse, which he did. It's documented. Literally, you can watch the videos and see it in real time. So I just think that the prosecution is not focusing on the right things.